This single mother named Linda worked 2 jobs from dawn to dusk every day just to raise her 3 children safely. However, on a cold night, she lay in her own bathtub and left this world forever. The police's initial investigation showed that it seemed to be an accidental drowning after getting drunk, but when you look at the tear-stained faces of Linda's daughters, do you feel that something is wrong? This true story that happened in Canada shocked the entire country, and hidden behind the case is human greed, distortion, and cold-bloodedness. So what exactly happened that year? Hello! Welcome to the Crime Documentary Files channel. Let's first travel back to 2003 to uncover that unsettling veil and face the darkest side of human nature. Mississauga, located on the west shore of Ontario, Canada, and the 3rd largest city in the province. It is densely populated, with more than 710,000 people living here, according to the 2021 census. It is also an important transportation hub in the Greater Toronto Area, with 7 provincial highways crossing the city. Geographically, it is special as it is across the lake from New York State in the United States. Today's story happened here. On the night of January 18, 2003, at 10:30 p.m., the phone at a police station in Mississauga suddenly rang. The officer answered the call and heard a girl crying on the other end. She tearfully said that her mother had an accident while taking a bath and was now lying motionless in the bathtub. The police rushed to the house the girl mentioned and indeed found a woman who had stopped breathing in the bathtub in the upstairs bathroom. The officers attempted CPR, but unfortunately, the woman had already died. After questioning, it was learned that the deceased was named Linda Andersen, a single mother living with her 3 children. The report was made by 2 of her daughters, 16-year-old Sandra and 15-year-old Beth. They told the police that they went out with 2 friends to a nearby restaurant for dinner and drinks around 6 p.m. When they left, their mother had had a drink and was preparing to take a bath. They returned home around 10:30 p.m., didn't see their mother, and after searching found her in the upstairs bathtub, no longer breathing, and immediately called 911. The officers felt sympathetic seeing the 2 weeping sisters. Originally, they relied on their mother, and now this fragile family was completely shattered. To preserve the scene and find a place for the sisters, the police contacted Sandra and Beth's aunt to let them stay at her house. The police then began to carefully inspect the house and found no signs of forced entry. Nothing was missing from any of the rooms, and the bathroom where Linda died was tidy with no signs of a struggle. It seemed that Linda had accidentally drowned herself while taking a bath, a complete accident. But the police didn't think so. To them, any mysterious death in a bathtub was highly unusual and worth suspicion and investigation. The forensic examination of Linda's body found no abnormalities, no injuries, no foreign fingerprints, only a very high blood alcohol concentration of 400 milligrams per 100 milliliters, 5 times the legal limit. This was obviously a very dangerous, even lethal level. There were also 2 glasses of high-proof vodka beside the bathroom cabinet. Through interviews and clues provided by the daughters, it was learned that Linda was a heavy drinker, almost inseparable from alcohol daily. Could it be that she really drowned herself in the bathtub after getting drunk? Linda Andersen was born in 1959 in the Podlaski province of Poland. After growing up in her hometown, she somehow got the idea of moving to Canada to live. She then came to Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. Linda was very satisfied with the local culture and environment. What made her even happier was that soon she met her Prince Charming, Carubin. The 2 hit it off quickly and soon got married. In 1987, Linda gave birth to their eldest daughter, Sandra, and the next year, their younger daughter, Beth. Originally, this was an enviable family, and everyone was hopeful about the future. But unexpectedly, A twist caused this happy family to break apart. Carabin either couldn't resist the allure of the outside world or was dissatisfied with family life. He heartlessly abandoned his wife and 2 daughters. After the divorce, he didn't pay any child support, and the burden of raising the 2 daughters fell entirely on Linda. To survive, she needed to work while taking care of her daughters, and the pressure was immense. Such painful days led the originally optimistic Linda to depression, and she began to use alcohol to numb herself. As the old saying goes, alcohol only deepens sorrow. She drank a lot, but her troubles and worries didn't decrease at all. Drunk, she would often shout at the children. Since Sandra and Beth were still young, they couldn't help their mother with her problems. The days were tough for the family of 3, full of frequent quarrels. After a few years, Linda felt that the family needed a man, so she found a boyfriend, Doug, and quickly remarried. Doug had a previous conviction for drunk driving, but otherwise he seemed honest. Initially, the family lived in harmony, and Linda even had a son, Robert, with Doug. But soon, Doug's true nature was revealed. He not only had a bad temper, but also harbored inappropriate thoughts towards Sandra and Beth. When Linda wasn't home, he would extend his evil hands towards 12-year-old Sandra. The children had no way to fight back against their stepfather's abuse. Threatened by Doug, they didn't dare to tell their mother, but secretly told a pastor at a nearby church. Surprisingly, the pastor, although thinking the matter was serious, didn't call the police, but advised Sandra to warn Doug, "If you don't stop, I'll tell my mother." This, of course, had no effect, and the sisters continued to suffer. In 2001, Doug's domestic violence against the children was exposed. He was convicted again and left the family. 2 failed marriages had deeply hurt Linda. She had to take on the burden of caring for her children alone once more, and this time it was for 3 children. Fortunately, Sandra and Beth had grown older, so they could help with household chores and take care of their younger brother. To support the 4 of them, Linda found multiple jobs, which was extremely stressful. As her worries increased, her drinking problem worsened. She would drink as soon as she got home, often getting herself drunk, and most of her income was spent on alcohol. The neighbors and Linda's friends were aware of this situation. After the police interviewed some people, they had a clear idea. When Linda passed away, there were 2 glasses of vodka on the bathroom cabinet. The coroner's report concluded that the cause of death was drowning. Apart from finding a high concentration of alcohol in her body, there were no other abnormalities. Combined with her long-term drinking habit and the statements from her 2 daughters, the police concluded that they had overthought it and that it was an accidental drowning caused by alcohol consumption. The case was thus closed smoothly. Because Linda had purchased insurance for herself, the insurance compensation would be divided among her 3 children after her death. Sandra and Beth each received $133,000, and 3-year-old Robert received $67,000. At the time of the incident, Sandra was only 16 and Beth was only 15, both still minors, so their aunt became their guardian, and they moved in with her. Their aunt was very sympathetic to the sisters' plight and took good care of them. Robert was taken care of by other relatives of Linda. Initially, as time passed, the matter began to fade from people's minds. But no one expected that 11 months later, the appearance of a key figure would bring the case back into the spotlight, shaking all of Canada. In December 2003, a young man named Charlie, claiming to be a friend of Sandra, came to the police station. He said he had an earth-shattering secret. The widely publicized case of Linda's drowning was not an accident. It was a plot, and the culprits were none other than her 2 daughters, Sandra and Beth. This news shocked the police. If it were true, everyone had been fooled by these 2 girls. But on further thought, it seemed unlikely since nothing unusual was found. However, Charlie provided detailed information, saying that Sandra had told him herself, even describing the crime in detail. The police decided to investigate secretly, using Charlie to extract a confession from Sandra and Beth. Charlie was willing to cooperate. The police gave him a car equipped with surveillance equipment to secretly record video and audio. Over the next month, Charlie frequently invited the sisters out. Sandra and Beth, who had a habit of using drugs, readily accepted his invitations. In the car, Charlie subtly steered the conversation towards the details of Linda's death. The sisters, unguarded, began to boast about their actions, describing the entire process and feeling proud of having deceived the police. They felt untouchable and were enjoying their newfound wealth. The police recorded and reviewed all the videos and audio from that month. The officers were outraged by the sisters' shocking and heinous behavior. From the recordings, the police learned the following about the crime. Sandra and Beth were extremely resentful of their mother's drinking, especially since most of the family income was spent on alcohol, leaving them with little pocket money. They envied their classmates and friends who wore nice clothes and frequented bars and malls. Knowing their mother had a $200,000 life insurance policy, they realized they could each get $133,000 if their mother died. They even had plans for how to spend the money, including traveling to Europe and buying a small house there to grow marijuana. With these thoughts, a chilling plan to murder their mother formed in their minds. They began researching various methods online to create a perfect crime that would avoid police detection, from firearms to knives, and finally drowning. After gathering information and consulting friends, they decided to exploit their mother's drinking habit. Their plan was to first get their mother drunk, then give her a large dose of Tylenol, which would harm the liver and affect the heart rate. They would then suggest she take a bath to relax and lure her into a water-filled bathtub where she would drown. This way, they could collect the insurance money. On January 21, 2004, based on the contents of the recordings, the police directly arrested Sandra and Beth, and the case was reopened for investigation. Since both were still minors, they were detained in a juvenile detention center during the investigation and were held separately to prevent collusion. However, the issue was that the covert recordings and surveillance alone were not enough to convict them. If the sisters claimed that their statements were just fanciful and false, the police would indeed have no leverage. Therefore, more evidence was needed to make their denials impossible. During the initial questioning, both firmly denied their crimes and claimed to have a perfect alibi. They said that from 6 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. on the night of the incident, they were at a restaurant with friends, supported by witness statements and the restaurant's surveillance footage. This was verified to be true. However, there was definitely something fishy. Fortunately, the police's records at the time of the incident were very thorough, including the water temperature and depth in the bathtub. At the time, the water in the bathtub was already cold. Combined with the initial forensic examination of Linda's body, crime experts estimated the time of death to be before 6 p.m., which broke Sandra and Beth's alibi. Additionally, their computer records showed extensive searches on alcohol, Tylenol, and their combined effects, as well as conversations with friends about how to get rid of their mother, with classmates helping to devise the plan. The forensic pathologist also re-examined Linda's blood samples and found that besides the high alcohol concentration, there was also 3 times the safe dose of codeine. All this constituted strong evidence. However, what puzzled and angered the police was that Beth had 3 classmates who were aware of the plot, including a male classmate who not only failed to report it, but also participated from start to finish. He helped plan the crime and even provided 5 Tylenol pills. During the sisters' execution of the crime, he called to remind them to hold Linda's head underwater for at least 4 minutes. Such actions were truly appalling, and he was also arrested by the police. It is worth mentioning that after Linda's death, the two sisters, who had escaped police suspicion, were very arrogant. They often boasted to friends about how they had perfectly killed their mother without arousing suspicion. After receiving the insurance payout, the sisters spent money lavishly, buying expensive clothes and jewelry, showing no signs of grief. Such behavior could not go unnoticed by those around them. However, apart from Charlie, everyone chose to remain silent. Eventually, the police compiled all the evidence and charged the sisters with murder. The news that daughters plotted to kill their mother and initially escaped justice was so sensational that it caused an uproar not only locally but throughout Canada. Many people found it hard to believe that two underage girls could commit such a heinous act, thinking Linda's death must have been an accident. Outsiders who did not understand the situation could be forgiven for their doubts, but the police, who had uncovered the truth, had no more sympathy. Their duty was to bring the real culprits to justice, which was the best way to honor Linda. The trial officially began in November 2005. Sandra and Beth continued to deny their crimes. However, during later separate interrogations, Sandra finally broke down and confessed, followed by Beth. Their account of the crime matched the previously revealed details. They got their mother drunk, gave her Tylenol, and then put her in the bathtub. Sandra wore gloves and held her mother's head underwater until she stopped moving. After the act, they quickly left the house to meet friends, creating an alibi. The motive for the crime was money, as they wanted to live a luxurious life abroad. Judge Bruce, in his closing statement, remarked that Linda had single-handedly supported a family of 4. Exhausted from working 2 jobs, she relied on alcohol to numb herself. She could never have imagined that the daughters she worked so hard to raise would plot to kill her for money. Sandra and Beth meticulously planned and nearly executed a perfect crime, but the truth eventually came to light, and the evidence against them was irrefutable. "This may be the strongest evidence I've seen in my 30-year career," the judge said. In June 2006, after more than 6 months of trial, the court found them guilty of first-degree murder. Although they deserved life imprisonment, considering they were both under 18 at the time of the crime, they were sentenced according to the Canadian Youth Criminal Justice Act, which limits the maximum sentence for youth offenders to 10 years. In reality, they only needed to serve 6 years in prison, with the remaining 4 years in a halfway house where conditions were much more lenient than in prison. The court also planned to reclaim the insurance money given to them, but by the time they were arrested, they had spent most of it, leaving only $48,487, which was then given to Linda's youngest son, Rupert. The male classmate who helped plan the crime and provided the Tylenol pills was also convicted and sentenced to 8 months in prison. After her conviction, Sandra accepted an interview and said she had been abused by her mother's boyfriend, Doug, since she was 12, with no one to help her escape the nightmare. She and her sister lived in constant fear, and even after Doug left, their mother's constant drinking left them hopeless. This resentment grew into hatred, which blinded them. "I am deeply sorry for my crime," she said. "I regret everything that happened. I went through so much trauma, and what I did was the most painful thing I've ever experienced." Since Sandra and Beth were both under 18 when the crime occurred, and during the trial, their names and identities were protected under Canadian law. Thus, their names in the media are aliases, and they are widely referred to as the bathtub girls. The sisters have since been released. Due to identity protection, their current lives are unknown, but publicly available information indicates that Sandra continued her education after her release and graduated from university. She later became a single mother and, in another interview, expressed remorse, saying, "I wish my mother was still alive. She was my best friend. I want to share my life with her. I am deeply ashamed of what I did." Beth, meanwhile, married, had children, and pursued a law degree, becoming a lawyer. Her mentor commented that she has a unique perspective and insight that help her excel as a lawyer. Some colleagues believe that society should give them a second chance since they were underage at the time. The sentencing of the two sisters also sparked debate among legal professionals. Some argued that Canada's juvenile justice system, which allows for a maximum of only 6 years in prison for underage offenders, is too lenient and might encourage criminal behavior among minors. They called for changes to the Youth Criminal Justice Act to impose harsher penalties. However, many others believed that minors, being not fully mature, deserve a second chance and that the punishment should not be too severe. This debate continued for a long time, but ultimately did not lead to any changes in the law. The issue of juvenile offenders is not unique to Canada, but exists in many places. This tragic story highlights the importance of addressing and guiding troubled youth to prevent them from falling into a cycle of crime. It reminds us that unchecked desires can lead to heinous actions and that vigilance and education are crucial in preventing such tragedies. If you like my videos, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.